on this computer.
A breath, a breath, a breath, a breath, a
Uh-oh.
breath.
That's what happened. That's what happened.
All right, West Coast Whiskey Club. Thanks for joining us today. We're here with Raj Bhakta from Bhakta Spirits, the founder of Bhakta Spirits. Glad to have you, Raj. Thanks for joining us.
Great to be here, Jay.
All right, so let's start off with a little bit about you. Can you tell us where you started, where your journey began?
Sure. Well, good evening, everybody, from Vermont, Poultney, Vermont, where we've had our first real day of spring. I'm actually heading out to California tomorrow, bright and early, so I'll be joining you there in the left coast. But it's good to be here with you tonight. Um, my name is Raj Bhakta, and I got into the whiskey business, I guess, formally on the, let's say, supplying it instead of drinking it side, which I was very good at, drinking it before I started supplying it. Actually, after supplying it as well. And that began probably, I mean, it's difficult to put the date on it, but I launched a company called Whistle Pig in the summer of 2010. By late 2009, I had brought a guy named Dave Pickerel, who really was instrumental in getting that company off the ground. God rest his soul. And, that started with identifying two things. One, I would say, was, let's say, a very broad opening that was beginning at the time in craft whiskey. I benefited from being in Vermont here, which was on the cutting edge of the whole farm to table craft movement overall in a number of different areas. And on the other side, on the whiskey side, there was this revival really beginning to take shape, very, very early phases, particularly in some of the emerging cocktail scene in, let's call it, the hip cool places in the country, New York, San Francisco, Chicago, a couple places there in Southern California, that and those guys realized that a lot of these classic cocktails called for rye. Rye was beginning to come back, and between the opening, let's say, in craft, um, and with a particular opportunity in providing a really high quality rye at that time, and I'll wrap this up because we've got a number of things to taste through. At that time, there were two missing components. One, there was a lot of craft distilleries starting up, but they
Uh-oh.
is that
Okay, did we
me?
get it? No, I don't think it's you. Okay.
Uh, that really hadn't begun, like the quality wasn't there, age product wasn't there, and there was this wide open space really in the higher end of the American whiskey spectrum, which, if you wanted something, let's say, aged and expensive overall, and I'm talking in generalities here, it was pretty much Scotch, and Macallan ruled the ball game there. So craft, aged and rye sort of brought those three things together in a beautiful package with Whistle Pig, had a famous master distiller, and rode that company or led that company through a very successful 10-year period. And I sold in 2019 and was looking for where are opportunities in spirits now? What's an underappreciated category? And really found the crown jewels of the world of aged craft spirits to be in the Armagnac region of France. So that's a long-winded answer to your question, and I'll tighten them up as we go through these as I can obviously talk.
All right. Well, we're big fans of Whistle Pig, and we loved what you did there, and the great ryes that were being produced. And then you moved over to Armagnac, and that's such a big change. So how did that happen?
That was the summer of 2018. And actually, I've got a guy on the line here who's employee number one, and he's a sales chief. I might have hopped off, but Jonathan Page, and I see Michael Bosch is here. You know him. How you doing, Michael? And I was over in France. My wife got pregnant with our fourth kid, and she wasn't so happy about it at the time. And it was all my fault, 100% my fault. So, she pretty much threw me out of the house. We were doing a sabbatical in France over in the Alps and, told me to get lost for a while and really, pretty much that way. I mean, chased me out of the house with a broom. And I got into a car and drove all the way across France. I did a Boss Hog release, the fourth one called The Black Prince, and that was
Mhm.
finished in an Armagnac cask, and it was kind of opened my eyes and opened my mind and curiosity to find out more about the region. And I drove over there, and what I saw literally, blew me away. I mean, craft, rarity, spirits, a production cycle, which instead of an American distillery, which is running 24/7, 365 pretty much, these guys distill for a couple of days of the year in most cases from that harvest. And most of it's produced on 20, 30 acre farms.
Mm.
And I was just astonished at the bespoke craft, really farm-based nature of that place on the one side. On the other side, I found a place that had every single vintage going back to 1868. So, I was just astonished by what I saw. Like, his oldest vintage came from a time when Germany didn't even
Mm.
exist as a country, and there was a guy named Napoleon, Emperor of France. You know what I mean? It was kind of
Yeah.
just mind-blowing.
Yeah. So that leads us to Bhakta and the creation of Bhakta, which we tried a couple years ago. You had a rep out here that we worked with, and he introduced us very early. We loved it. And your first release or your first pour tonight is Hogwarts worth. So it's batch two, 93.8 proof.
Yep. So that's this bottle here. It's lovely. Yeah, I've slightly changed the guy on the label. On the third batch, he put some tusks on him. I thought he looks a little like too AIE friendly on it. But this is where I fuse the world of American whiskey, bourbon in particular, with Armagnac. And so, let's get into this. I presume, do all of you guys have pours of this stuff, or am I?
Yes. Yeah. We sent it to everybody.
Okay. So on this one, this is batch two. So we're on batch three right now.
Hmm.
And batch two, I mean, the story pretty much says it, right on the back, right? Here we're, well, what did I sired a famous whiskey brand called Whistle Pig, sold it, severed all ties, but I remained fond of pigs. My work felt incomplete and this while American whiskey needs a shakeup. So I present Hogsworth. I think it's the finest bottle you'll find. Many times the price. Taste and see. We blend some of America's best bourbons with exquisite Armagnacs from France. In this case, some over 40 years old, the oldest vintage being 1982. And it brings two worlds together and a balance. I'm trying to think, it's about, you probably see the numbers here. The bourbon is about 60%, almost exactly. And Armagnac is 40% of this. And we've got, on the nose, you probably, I mean, I know it, I've gone through it, but you get a bourbon first whiff, first contact, you get that bourbon, but then there's clearly something very different going on as well. And that balance of like the sweetness that the bourbon brings to the table. And we've actually got a really unusual bourbon in here from Minnesota, an organic bourbon with those old Armagnacs give us like a really lovely balance and a
Yeah.
fusion of two worlds of bourbon and Armagnac in one that's very, very well balanced. The bourbon doesn't, it's kind of like well, let's get into it, right? So,
You can definitely tell this is 9.3 years. You can smell the age on this, but what is you said it's 40-year Armagnac that it's been in with, right?
yeah, so
All right.
5% of this will go over the blend, right? So, if this one here,
Mhm.
you got 40% of this is basically 5 year, 4 year, 9 month old Tennessee. About 20% of this is 5.5 year Minnesota. 17% of this is 11 year Armagnac. Uh, I'm I'm rounding the numbers. 18% is a 13-year Armagnac, and 5% of this is a 40-year Armagnac. So
Mhm.
you've got a blend from about 5 years to 40 years in this. And I'll go through, like what I love about this. It's nice, it's easy, it's approachable, it's well balanced. There's a lot going on, as you get into this and you start sipping it, what you taste and if you actually leave a glass open, what you're going to taste in the first, let's say, sip and what you're going to taste if you leave it open for 15 minutes are going to be different
Mhm.
because you've got such a variety of different flavors in here. And I want to say something about average age because there are a couple of products where I'll talk about average age. We're used to thinking in terms of minimum age and single barrels or single vintages. And you can have some spectacular single barrels and single vintages, and we're going to taste some later on. But a blend of a variety of years, what it allows you to do is kind of, I liken it to, being able to take the best elements of like youth and vigor that you had when you were 18 years old and elements of experience and wisdom that you have, in
Mhm.
my case, when you're sitting down at 50 and being able to bring them both together in one where you get the brightness and the effervescence of some of the younger spirits, while also that depth that you particularly pick up on the finish here of that 1982 vintage, which, lingers for a while. And that is really the beauty of a blend and the beauty of this blend in particular.
I don't know how many of our members have tried Armagnac, just straight Armagnac, but it has that real raisin, like getting like a raisin towards the end of this thing. Is that what that's coming from?
Yep, that's where you're getting the Armagnac. Armagnac actually, and we're going to taste a little bit of it. I mean, as it ages, it starts off very fruity.
Hmm.
It's made from wine. And then as it ages, it becomes much more, raisin, fig, prune
Hmm.
notes.
Yeah, it's really interesting. And for a 93 proof whiskey, it feels like there's so much depth to it.
Yeah, I mean, this is, as we're going to taste, at 94 proof, it's got some spice, it's
Hmm.
got some balance. It's kind of, I think, light on the initial approach, and it really hums, towards the end, right?
Hmm.
And that's essentially the transition from younger bourbon to the older Armagnacs in the overall finish. But we're bringing two worlds here together, right? And
Yeah.
this is a great stepping stone for bourbon drinkers and American whiskey drinkers to get into some of this really, unusual Armagnac. In the third batch, and we'll move on here. In the third batch, I took the bourbon percentage up a little bit, and what we've done, like batch one was almost 50-50. Batch two is 60-40. Batch three is like 80-20. And so we're
Mm.
moving the bourbon, percentage up and bringing the age up, in that bourbon all overall, and then adding some even older Armagnacs in lesser percentage. So I encourage you guys, if you think this is an interesting concept, um, you can pick up actually the full three batches. I don't know if we still have it, but we had it online where you can get batch one, two, and three. And then later on this summer, we'll have batch four, which is going to be, an 11-year average age at about, and we took the proof down a little bit. We're at about 88 proof now.
Wow. So your blending theory, when you started down this blending process, how did you come up with these numbers? Were you just pour it in a bucket and give it a try, or how did you come up with this idea?
Oh man, I mean, like the one that we're going to try next, I mean, it's so much trial and error. First in figuring out, do the things even work together, right?
Hmm.
So, for example, I was first playing around with the rye because I wanted to blend a rye with Armagnac, but really, rye and Armagnac don't blend well together. The right blending pair in French spirits if you want rye, you need to blend it with Calvados, and the bourbon blends well with Armagnac. So we spent probably a year playing around with different ryes and Armagnac, but it just didn't hum right. And the beauty of blends, so long as a blend's got a bad name somewhere along the way, because, well, I think that they were generally less expensive products that were heavily doctored overall, right? I mean, you take a really young spirit, you'd throw whatever you had in together, and then you would add sugar and caramel, and I'm talking about 50 years ago. And it was just designed for maximum consistency and really was heavily doctored. I mean, Canadian whiskey, all that stuff is very heavily doctored stuff. We don't use any flavorings. We don't use any, I mean, it's just thyme and wood and the initial spirit. And I think you'll notice as we're putting these blends together, there's a variation, and the idea here on these Hogsworth and doing these batches is that you can actually follow, the evolution as we continue to, really play around with it, right? Increase, decrease the ages of the bourbon, change the percentages, change the proof. We've got one called Whole Hog, which is a 15-year barrel strength,
Mm.
which is really interesting. I love those. We just did a blend for an 1868 release to celebrate America's 250th. We're doing 5 barrels of that. And there I took a blend of all of the Armagnacs from 1868 to the present day and compared that with some very old bourbons. And I mean, honestly, I wish I had some here right now. But I mean, it's astonishing. So really, when you get into it, you get better and better at the blends. Will always be a house of vintages overall. I'll say something
Hmm.
quickly there, and then let's get into the next one. The concept of drinking vintage spirits. You know what? Let me save the vintage talk for when we get into some of the single vintages. Should we get into the 1928?
Yeah, let's give that a try. Our second pour is the Bacta 1928 straight rye, 100 proof. This is finished in the Calvados, like you said.
Calvados, yeah.
All right.
So, all right, this one is straight rye, Calvados, and Armagnac. So this is a blend. I don't have a bottle there, but I'm very familiar with it. I can walk you through the test. This is like nothing. I mean, this is like nothing else, but this is like on a whole different level of
Ooh,
unique. So the oldest spirit in here is from 1928. All right.
wow.
The youngest spirit in here is from 2000, I think 16. No, maybe 16. Yeah, 16, 17. So you've got a blend of nearly 100 years of history in this. And on this one, you've got a totally different nose, right? So you've
Yeah.
got, you pick up some apple probably on this that comes from Calvados, which is an apple brandy
Mm.
from
Hmm.
northwest, the Normandy province of France, where the D-Day invasions happened. And so we bring in the idea here is bring in that spice from the rye,
Hmm.
right? And then rye is complemented in a very lovely way with some of the sweetness of the apple brandy, which hits mid palate on this. And then you get the finish, which comes from the following vintages that are in here of the Armagnac: 1928, 1941, and these are interesting because they're very rare war vintages. I mean, France got invaded three times by the Germans, most spectacularly in the Second World War. And they had to hide all these things, so these would have been, the 1928 and the 1941 vintages literally made it through. German onslaught and the German occupation during the Second War, where these barrels would have been taken out and hidden in fields and hay bales. But 1928, 1941, 1962, Kennedy space age, there's a lot of history in here.
Yeah.
1973, which won number one spirit in the world, and 1997, which we're going to taste. So you got a beautiful range of history. And this is this is a greater example of what I would say than we were talking about in the Hogsworth, of just bringing different spirits categories together. And this is going to make, you want to talk about it? I mean, this is going to make the best old fashioned you've ever had. It's already got an interesting, split base to it. It's got a nice degree of creaminess, 100
Yeah.
proof. It's a beautiful pour on its own, but I mean, this is rye spice, apple notes, and a long creamy finish that these old Armagnacs bring to the table.
There's great balance to this. For 100 proof, it's not overly aggressive. It's really creamy, like you were saying. I think that's the part that really comes across for me.
Yeah, it's yeah, there's some questions here. So the mash bill on the rye, this has actually got a decent amount. So this is an unusual mash bill. It's a 51% rye, 49% corn on the mash bill. So that makes up 60% of it, a high corn rye. And then 30% of this is Calvados of about a 30-year average age. And then you have those vintages that I listed.
Hmm.
That's about 10% of the get that's where the old vintages come in.
Are these being aged in France or back here in America?
So the blend was the whiskey. The whiskey's always been here. We shipped over the parts. We shipped over the French components and blended it here in America. And this sits for a couple of months to marry before we bottle it. So you
Okay.
got to bring these different and let these different spirits integrate for a decent period of time before you can bottle. Otherwise, you get this thing called like bottle shock, and the flavors don't integrate properly.
Hmm.
But you must let them sit before you taste them and decide to move forward with it.
Um, you're talking about like when you're putting the blend together, or
Yes, yes. When you're putting the blend together.
yeah, when you're putting the blend. I mean, putting the blend together is like a. It took 2 years to put this blend together of trying to get the right mash bill with the whiskey to pair right with the right Calvados and with the right vintages of Armagnac. It was a really tough blend to put together to get it to balance, and integrate, because I like to bring in, you want a good combination of character and smoothness, and they're normally inversely related. The more character you can get into a spirit, generally you lose in the smoothness, and vice versa. You can make something pretty smooth, but you can lose character pretty quickly. But from a flavor, balance standpoint, I'm very, very proud of this product for its, it's like nothing that's ever been done before. It's never been done before, this particular blend. And, I love the fact that you can say, look, when you've got the bottle out, have you ever tasted something nearly 100 years old? It's got almost, 100 years of history, and our you know, our tagline is here, like the famous drink that we make, the signature cocktail is a 100-year old fashioned. Well, you
Yes.
almost got 100 years of history in your old fashioned. I love it neat, but it makes it incredible old fashioned. It's 100 proof.
So at our spirit showcase 2 years ago, um, one of your reps was there and they were making the 100-year-old fashioned for people. It was spectacular.
Great cocktail.
Hmm. That is really
That's
interesting.
about
I like that.
proof, which is 100. The mash bill, it's too many blends to say there's a specific mash bill, right?
Yeah, so it'd be 60% rye, 30% Calvados, 10% Armagnac. And within the whiskey component, the whiskey that we use is a 51% rye whiskey. 51% of the mash bill of the whiskey is the rye. Is that making sense?
Mhm.
Yes. Yes.
Okay.
And Tyler, did you find this available in our area?
Yes, High Proof has it for $62.99.
Excellent.
That's a good deal, actually.
Yeah. And Raj, this is on your website too, right?
This is on the website. Yeah. And interestingly, if you're curious about what the different components taste like, there's like the 1928 disassembled where we have the rye, the Calvados, and I think the 1962 Armagnac vintage where you can taste each one of these individually, kind of put your own blend together. I think if you're curious about how these things taste in their independent parts, that's a really cool option because you get the rye, you get the Calvados, and you get the Armagnac in the pack.
Hmm. That's delicious.
So, show of hands, the preference for Hogsworth and then preference for 1928. So who prefers the Hogsworth?
Oh man.
Two.
I
All right,
I
1928.
I really like that one.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Makes sense. I mean, 1928 is, 50% more money. Oh, it's got an average age in here of about 17 years,
Hmm.
right? So you're getting a lot more age, you're getting a heck of a lot more balance, and that makes sense. Appropriate for the different price points. This 1997 vintage, Jonathan, you're on the line?
Let's see here.
Yes, I'm in the car. Forgive me, but it's a prized possession vintage you've got there in your hands, Mr. Bhakta.
This is Jonathan's favorite vintage. I'm going to see if I have it on the bar behind me. So this is our first. Are we okay to move on?
Yeah, we can go to number 3. This is Bhakta 1997, the Armagnac, 108.6 proof.
So this is a big one. And this is our first. Let me see. This is our first single vintage. So I want you to just take one, like, slow it down here for a second before you take a gulp of it. Just get a nose of this thing. Very, very different flavor profile. This is one of the parts of the 1928, but
Oh,
yeah, this is a completely different beast. So I'm going to tell you a little bit about Armagnac before we get into this thing. Just nose that for a little bit. You've got, I'm using a 94, and it's a little different than the 97. I'm going to go off of memory on the 97, and it can change a little bit with which barrel you got. But you've got about a 30-year-old drink here. It would have spent most of its time, almost all of it, in French oak. It's made from grape. This is the oldest known spirits category recorded in human history going back to the year 1307.
wow.
Right? This came from vines, came during the conquest when Julius Caesar conquered Gaul about 50 years before the birth of Christ. Yes, this is a 100% Armagnac, 100% produced in the year 1997. And, this begins to go into what I love about these things. And this would have been produced purely from the harvest that came off of the vine in the late summer, early fall of 1997, right? So get a nose on this. I mean, I get those date notes on the one that I've got. I wish I had the exact 97 that you've got, but you're going to pick up like some chocolate notes on it, some tobacco notes on it, very rich flavor profile. But just a drop here on the nose. If it's totally new to you, raise your hands. How many? This is the first Armagnac you've had single vintage.
Yeah, single, yes.
Okay, so just go back like you're doing in the beginning. Just put a
Mhm.
drop on your tongue, like a drip. Let that coat with that, flavor profile sink in for a second. It's going to be very different. And then take a little tiny sip and a big, big explosion of flavor. And that's what I really love about these Armagnacs. I mean, this has got more flavor, more history than really any other
Mm.
spirits category. So if you're looking for flavor and complexity, it's a single distillation process. There's a lot of variation in the different vintages that you can get year by year, depending on the harvest conditions that year, depending on the type of wood that it was in. Unlike bourbon, it doesn't need to go into new wood, so this will have a tendency to be rebarreled. The cellar master in Armagnac, the guy. So in America, and I love whiskey, right? I mean, I'm a big fan of American whiskey. But you fill a barrel up, you put it in the warehouse, and you leave it there until you take it. Whereas in Armagnac, the cellar master, and he's really responsible for the evolution of that. They're generally much smaller cellars, not
Mm.
these gigantic rick houses, and he'll rebarrel it over the ages. So probably this will spend 5 or 6 years in new wood. Then he'll put it into an older barrel. Then
Mm.
he'll put it in an older barrel. So depending on how long you want to age it, goes through many different barrels. You'll move it around the warehouse so that you're trying to, figure out when it's ready. And when it's ready, you either put it into a blend, ideally you put it into a single vintage, and this is full barrel strength. We don't really add water to any of our single vintages. And I'll tell you why I really love single vintages. And I'll go back because I got the idea from WhistlePig. The initial batches of WhistlePig that came out in 2010, 11, and 12, those were, I think, like 1999, 2000, 2001 vintages that came out of a distillery in Western Canada. And it was the only distillery that does 100% rye, and those were the best vintages. And if I had the year vintage on those bottles, like a bottle of Boss Hog One, which was a difficult bottle to sell incidentally at a $150 price point when it was new. I don't know, it's a 10, 20, $30,000 bottle now, depending
Yeah,
on where you buy
steel
it.
now.
If I had the vintages on the original Whistle Pigs, those original vintages would have been heavily sought after because a lot of blends change, a lot of flavor profiles change. But if you find a great single vintage, just like what has been driving the wine world for a couple of centuries now, you pick that vintage up and you hold on to that vintage and you keep it in your cellar. Who's got a Boss Hog One? That's a heavy one. Um, Raise your hand who's got the Boss Hog One.
That's John over there.
Yeah,
Shannon. Yeah.
that's so the one that made Boss Hog One was also that was a high proof version of the original batch of Whistle Pig that went on. It's got a totally different flavor profile than the 10 today, and that's kind of what I was talking about.
So this is really interesting, very flavorful. The finish is extremely long. It just hangs out. So can you tell us a little bit, what's the difference of an Armagnac and a brandy?
Okay. So same, it's like the same kind of variation you'd get, like as you're talking about within the world of whiskey, you've got rye, bourbon, scotch, you can go on, right? But what's the difference is that it's made from grain, corn or rye or barley, or I mean, you can use other wheat. A brandy is made from a fruit. So you can make it from strawberries, you can make it from, you know, grapes, apples, peaches, plums, apricots, take your pick. That's the overall category of spirits which are made from fruit or from brandies. I think brandies are terribly underappreciated in the market. I think that if you get the if you're drinking, if you want a tasteless, odorless alcohol delivery system, you can all get a bottle of Tito's, right? But if you're looking for complexity, if you're looking for flavor, and if you're looking for like rarity, I can tell you that you can't get better than the world of single vintage Armagnacs from like um and there's a lot of variation. You need to know the house that you're getting from because there are some bad single vintages of Armagnac. I'm not going to tell you that it isn't the case, but if you find one you like, just the level of depth of flavor and complexity, the length of it
Hmm.
is just unparalleled in the world of spirits. Now, personally, I'll tell you something. When I first started tasting them, it was just too different for me. I was like, you know what? I prefer rye whiskey, right? Which is where my palate had been for 10 years. But once you start, getting into it, you find that other things are relatively boring, to be honest. Not that I don't like them, not that I'm not very happy drinking a bourbon or a rye or you name it, but just the variation, the complexity, the depth is unparalleled in any other spirit.
Well, earlier you mentioned how blending got kind of a bad name, and a lot of that, from Scotch, a blended Scotch was less interesting than a single malt. But I think now the blending game has gotten so good, and people are producing some great stuff. And this, I mean, obviously this is a single, but the second one we had was, and the first were both blended very well.
Yeah, I think that we're going to be, and a blend to keep your eye out is called the 1868 that we're doing. We're going to release that in about 2 months to celebrate America's 250.
Mm,
And that's a blend from 1868 to today with about, with some really old bourbons, really old Armagnacs. It's an amazing blend. So I want to do this right now. Show of hands. Based on the three that we've tried, whose favorite is the 97? Okay. All right.
um,
All right. So it's kind of like half of you. And who's now with the 1928?
that's me.
Yep.
Yep.
Shall we move on? What's our next one here?
Yeah.
Is
So
it
our next pour is going to be our Bacta 2014 Armagnac Cask Finished Bourbon, 105.4 proof.
Okay. Yep. So this is a cool one. So somebody had asked about mash bill. Um, this one is an unusual mash bill. This is 100% or nearly 100% corn, 99% corn. And I thought, and it's also exemplary of the type of things that I buy. I thought that was going to be, it was going to be boring, right? It was just going to be sweet and flat. So I got the sample of it. I really liked the sample of it. I was, favorably surprised by the fact that it had, some depth and complexity that I didn't expect to it. And then I finished it in a 1973 Scotch cask. We did release 10 barrels of this, but you get that classic bourbon nose, right, on this
Mhm.
one. But
Yep.
there's something going on, right? I mean, there's the classic bourbon nose, but classic corn whiskey nose, but there's something going on. and that is that 120-day Armagnac cask finish, which transforms what was actually quite a unique bourbon to begin with and turns it into something, in my opinion, that is, really unlike anything else. This vintage is a 10 barrel production, 10 barrel release that came out last year. And I would say that this is a beautiful balance. If you taste this thing, it doesn't drink like 100 and, pushing 6 proof. But it's got a great, it's a terrific bourbon with a really unique twist on it. In our 1973 cask, which is which won the number one, like of all the different vintages, is probably it's my most awarded vintages is 73. So, this is we probably have another 20 or 30 cases of this left.
Okay.
And it's it's a really special bourbon. Once it's gone, right? And the thing about it, the beauty of a vintage is you buy something, you put it away for 5 years. If it has a 10-year-old age statement on it, it's still 10 years old. But if it has the vintage year on it in another 5 years, you recollect that vintage as being more unique and more, historical. And so I love putting the vintage on there. And so I would say, truly, if you're going to, spend money on an aged spirit, look for something with the vintage on it, because that's just, you know, that puts a mark on it. And it brings a different light to it. So I'm going to do that same show of hands. I'm going to see if I have the Indian Single Malt here.
2012.
Yeah, I'm just looking for it on my shelf.
Okay. So this is really interesting. We're probably a larger bourbon focus than we are rye focused. I love your rye expressions. I know Connecticut, New York, that area is more rye focused, but this bourbon is really good. And it doesn't, if I wouldn't guess 105 on this at all.
And that's the beauty of the balance, right?
Mhm. Yeah.
It's got a high degree of character, but it
Mhm.
doesn't drink that at that level.
This one's not blended. It's just finished in the.
Yeah, this is not a
the-
blend. This is just a cask finish. This is a single vintage 2014 that's just finished in the Scotch cask. I mean, in the Armagnac cask.
Mhm.
And do you source from multiple different? You source the whiskey from multiple different companies?
Uh, I have whiskey from many different distilleries. This is an MGP whiskey. With an unusual mash bill, right? You don't find many 99% corns out there. And that's
Yeah.
kind of what I look for. Unusual mash bills, unusual flavor profiles, and then I try to put a twist on it, elevate it, right? So they have this, term in France, like élevieuse, which is, you get something that's good and you work on it through barrel aging, try to make it, great and unique.
I like the idea of your vintage idea too, because now you're not trying to reproduce the same thing. You're making something new, different, and it's going to be a unique experience. So I like
And
that.
when it's done, it's done.
Hmm.
And, it's not to come back again. When you find a great vintage that you like, you pick that vintage up, you'll hold on to it, and you sit in a couple bottles
Yep.
and bring it out. Because what people don't realize is a lot of flavor profiles change. Like if you go and, I mean, I certainly know what a whiskey, I can taste one from 12 years ago to one, today, it's different. Um, and the vintages also change. But if you find one you like, you hold on to it. Our 2011, have any of you had our 2011 vintage bourbon? Okay,
Oh,
yeah.
I don't know.
That was That was a spectacular one as well.
By the way, I love your bottle design. It's a gorgeous, unique bottle. It looks really nice on the shelf, and
Thank you.
people are always drawn to it. That like the eye look of it. It's nice.
Thank you. We went for an Art Deco look. If you think about all the different bottles and all the different styles that have been done, no one's done an Art Deco bottle.
Hmm.
All right, so we'll do the same show of hands. Is this the favorite to who thus far?
Yep.
Okay, so is this the winner? Yeah, I think this is the winner so far.
So far.
It is a bourbon group.
Yep.
Anybody still prefer the Armagnac, the 97? Okay.
I loved it. It's interesting. It's unique, but it's not something that I would do every day. It's that one, like, hey, I want to finish the night off with something unique and special. So I I enjoy it.
Well, this is going to take the next one that we're doing is going to take us in a completely, you can keep some of that bourbon. Now we're going to go to a completely different world.
This is the Bhakta 2012 Indian Single Malt Whiskey, 113.8 proof.
I think that the proof is higher than that, but we'll go with the sheet. I think the proof is higher than that. This, for those, anybody like Scotch out there?
Tyler's our guy.
This is going to be like an
Oh, yeah.
extremely amped up Scotch. Think like Indian level spice, right? So this is
Mm.
a barrel strength 2012 single malt, produced in the Scotch style, but aged in Indian barrels in the Indian heat. Which, if you nose this thing, it's got like a honey nose, it's got a sweet nose, it's got a powerful nose. You take a little tiny sip of that, and it comes in with like its initial hits you with a lot of sweetness, and then a flavor explosion takes place on it, right? So this is, and I'll do my Indian. This is sweet and spice, very sweet, very spicy. There's my Indian side coming out. So, it's just this I would say is very, very high on the character side and lower on the smooth side, but this is an extreme spirit and I love it. It's got honey right up front, honey on the nose, honey on the palate, sweetness, and then spice bomb. And that's pretty much the story with this one. Grains come from a northern Indian state called Rajasthan. This was distilled in Goa. I found this from a friend who introduced me to a distiller down in Goa, and I went and tasted some of his stuff, and I loved I love this particular vintage. It's you're not going to find another single malt like this, and
This is
that's what I love about it.
this is super interesting. Like you're producing ryes, Armagnacs, bourbons, and Indian single malts. Like, is it hard to say like, hey, this is what I do? So I think a venue like this where you could try the whole venue and be like, hey, I want to find that one again. This is really good. I like it, but not what I expected tonight.
Oh yeah, this is yeah. But look, if you even try my rum, my 1990 rum, which I recommend it for those of you if you ever run across it, it's like no other rum you've ever tasted. And what I try to do is look for unique products, unique barrels, unique flavor profiles, and do those with my single vintages, right? They come, they go, but you're just not going to find another thing just like that.
Yeah.
And the blends will remain consistent, right? The 1920 will remain consistent. Hogsworth coming out in batches. Um, and and so, like, this is an example of that. My job is I kind of travel around the world and look for rare and interesting lots of spirits that I don't think are, that you can find in other places. So the idea isn't to do, consistency, but to do unique and rare, with the single vintages.
Do you need help? No.
I always need help. I always need help. All
And
right, anybody got a favorite with this one?
I would have this on my bar for sure.
Actual favorite. Okay.
Oh,
Well, you
John.
guys like, I mean, that's an extreme. I love it. I love it. This is not you're not going to taste another single malt like it. I mean, you clearly get single malt, but this has got way more going on than the average single malt.
Hey, Tyler, do we have this available out here?
Not that I can see on our usual vendors, but definitely on bhaktaspirits.com.
Okay.
All right, guys, you want to do a little Q&A?
Yes. Let's open it up to the chat here. There's been a lot of questions.
$1.50 on this one. So the single vintages on the bourbon is about $1.50, and this is about $1.50. And the 1928 is about, I mean, like that's a great price at $62. It's about a $75 bottle.
Wow.
And the 1997 single vintage, probably around $2.50.
Raj,
So
we had a
the
question from Doug in our chat. Do you blend each Armagnac first before mixing the whiskey, or how did that all work out?
So you'll select your whiskey base, right? Then you'll try to pair that with the next, and like this is for 1928 that I'm speaking of. Then you'll try to pair that with a nice XO, an extra old Calvados, and then you'll use a vintage of Armagnac that you think generally works. And so that's how you put the first kind of boulder into place, and then you kind of refine it with different Calvadoses and Armagnacs, if that makes sense.
So if you're sitting down on the evening by yourself, what's the one you're going to grab behind you there?
I mean, like money's not the object. I'm not thinking of like I'm drinking for
You're
myself, and I'm
you're
just
on
gonna.
Todd's budget. Todd's budget. You can see the shelf behind him there.
All right.
No limitations.
This 1878 is just incredible.
That is so dark.
Yeah,
Like, that looks like
this is
syrup.
something unbelievable, out of this world. Super rare. I mean, but you know, this is a $20,000 bottle.
Oh,
So
that's John's budget.
but if I were to, you know, within the world of single vintages, and I was looking for, you know, I think that I'd recommend a couple of like I'll give a couple of like within the vintage Armagnacs, 62, 73, 79, 82. You know, those would be the ones that I would get, and I think that they offer extraordinary value for, you know, for what they are. You can go back in that 62. I don't know what the price is right now. We just took a bit of a price increase on it because we were running low. But still, for a 62, what is that? 64 years old. You know, it's a hell of a deal for what it is, right? I mean, you're going back to
and
Ken, and the 61 is probably a $3,000 bottle. I don't know,
that's
3,000.
a single barrel Armagnac.
Yeah, single vintage. You're saying, Michael, the 62 is not on our website anymore? Alan, you see that? It should be there. It is on the site, Jason says. So 62, I'd say 73. Again, that 79. These are the 79 is like, very 62 is beautiful. 73's probably got the overall like most agreeable balance of the broader number of palettes. 79 is a powerful vintage, and 82 has got a lot of chocolate notes on it that I love.
Mm.
That said, you know, they're all going to be great. I get your birth year, because there's a piece of connection, there's a piece of history there. And these Armagnacs, I can tell you, having spent a lot of money on them, I mean, the prices are going to go up on them overall.
Mm.
Uh, pick up your birth year. Um, the new blend that I'm most excited about will come out in about a couple of months. Maybe we'll get that information out.
Is
And
it,
that's just a crazy blend.
is that going to be a cast strength? That's the one for the 250th anniversary of the
Yeah,
country.
cash strength, probably about 115 proof or so. And it's a blend from 1868 to I think 2017, average age of about 35 years, 5 barrel release. I just tasted it. It's truly incredible. It's like I'm blown away by it. And I don't have the exact, averaging, but it's a 30 or 40-year average age. And that's going to be a $250 bottle, but ultra limited, all the age in there. And literally you're going from, Abraham Lincoln's era to the present day. And we've got almost every single vintage in there with a bourbon base of about a, 20-year-old average bourbon base.
Hmm. And
And
what
then
was the name of that one again?
it's called 1868. That'll be
1868. Perfect.
the America 250, 5 barrels named
Hmm.
from different presidents, and that's coming out soon. But that's like I'm just very happy with it right now.
Awesome.
The base bourbon on that?
Three, a 2005, 2014, like the one you just tried, is about is part of it, and a 2017. So I think that about I don't can't remember the exact proportions, but say it's for sake of argument, a third, 2005, 14, 17 bourbon,
From different distilleries?
different distilleries.
Oh, that's interesting.
So someone had a hand up in the chat there. Who was that?
I think,
I
I
don't
know I
see
saw
any.
John Foley had his hand up, but I did, but then I dropped off, and I don't even know if you can hear me. So,
Yes, we got you.
You're on.
all right,
His hand's
Raj,
been up the whole time.
go ahead, John. Sorry. Hey, Raj, first of all, I mean, you're advertising on the over America's Over the Barrel. I mean, that was originally what, like, I saw that ad on Facebook. I bought 3 bottles, and then I searched you on online and Wikipedia, and so I mean, I'm just super impressed with the whole story. And I'm sorry I was ignorant to it before, but here, my question, just listening to this whole thing is, has your appreciation for Armagnac surpassed what was bourbon and the original start? Like it almost sounds like the history and everything that goes and the whole story behind Armagnac has almost moved you.
Yeah, I mean, I think that I mean, look, I like finding unusual things and rare things, and I like, like my taste in cars, my taste in just like I like kind of like I'd rather I'll put it to you this way. The um I'd rather drive a very interesting, old clunker like a 1984 Oldsmobile Custom Cruiser, than a new car because it's got character, right? I really like unique things that have a lot of character, and that's my personality sort. So within character and flavor, I don't think you can beat Armagnac. Now, the challenge is there's a lot of variability, right? Kind of like the challenges of driving like a classic old car, like you know, it's got a maintenance bill. So it's not all perfect. It's not like you're gonna pull off, you know, you're gonna go to the Armagnac section of the liquor store and just grab whatever. You know, it's like same thing with bourbons. So you need to know what kind of vintage you're getting to, who you're getting your vintages from. All of that said, yeah, I think Armagnac are the crown jewels of the world of spirits. It's just like you're just entering a whole new world, and a world that's even more complex than, you know, than bourbon, because what bourbon, probably 80% of the product comes from 5 or 6 distilleries, whereas Armagnac is much more fragmented. But when you get a great vintage and you find a great vintage and you can pick it up, you can get great value, deeply unique flavor profile. So yes, I think that that's fair. With that said, I love American whiskey too. I really do. I really, really love it.
Awesome. Well, thank you for the time and yeah, everything.
Good to be here.
Can I ask a quick question?
Sure.
Who's this?
I bought that Boss Hog 1 a couple months ago, and I noticed where it says series, mine says the Boss Hog, and then I noticed some of them say Spice Dancer. What's the difference on that?
So yours said series Boss Hog and some say Spice Dancer.
Yeah.
I was just like playing around with names as we were bottling it. The that was kind of like Spice Dancer is what I like was just, it's such a spicy. Did you drink it yet?
No.
He doesn't drink, he just collects.
You'll see if you taste it while I call it Spice Dancer, and it just explodes with flavor. By the way, if you don't mind telling all of your best friends here, what'd you pay for it?
18,900
Yeah, yeah.
What?
from some place in New York before it went to an auction. And
Well,
they told me it was connected to you somehow through some kind of lineage or something, but they didn't have no paperwork on it, so I don't know if that was even real.
Well, it's all connected to him because he's.
That's true. I just saw him.
well, you know, if you're John, if you're a serious connector, maybe you know, you like these kinds of things. We've got this club called the Vintage Society, where you can pick up 2 bottles of each. And I've got, you know, quite a few of the original Boss Hogs. And if any of you are gonna go spend 18 grand on a bottle of Boss Hog and you're on here, talk to me first. The
Hey, that's what I told him to do.
no. Listen. You got a fair price. I just saw it for 30 the other day. I'm not saying that you didn't, but we can tie it into some really interesting collections, and you know, it's a great bottle to have. It'll be cool to drink, and don't you know, don't fret for a second. But if you want Boss Hog 1 and you want to put together some interesting collections, I've got it in my vault.
Yeah, I did. I'm glad I met Alan. He's hooked me up with a lot of your guys' stuff.
Good. You should get him in touch with Jen then on the Vintage Society.
I would like that.
All right, guys.
Introduction.
So Raj, we didn't have you guys at our last year's Spirit Showcase. We got Spirit Showcase 2026 coming up October 3rd. We'd love to have you out there. So if we can get Alan or whoever, or if you are out there, we can do something, a lot of fun things out there. But it's
Where
going to
do
be
you do it?
so we have a pretty big showcase in Long Beach area, December 10th or December 3rd. No, October 3rd. October 3rd. Sorry. Got the numbers backwards. October 3rd. It's gonna be a really good turnout. About 800 people. It's gonna be good.
I'll see if I can put something together while I'm out there. But otherwise, you know, Alan is from that neck of the woods, and JP's in Texas, and he's my co-founder. Like we'll have somebody out there.
Yeah, that'd be great.
I can't make it myself. But guys, it was a pleasure spending a little time with you. If there are any other questions, though, I'll take the exit. It's getting a little late here on the East
Yes.
Coast, and I gotta be up bright and early to catch a flight.
Thanks,
Um,
man.
Thanks for being here with us.
But it was a pleasure spending a little time with you. God bless and have a good evening. All right.
Thank you so
Thanks,
much.
Raj.
Thanks, Raj.
Take care, guys.
Thank you, Raj.
Bye.
Bye-bye.
It's true. It's
Stop
pretty little.
recording.